My name is Lena, and this is a story I never thought I'd have to tell, or ever get the chance to. I was 68 years old when everything changed. But back then I didn't feel like a woman of age, I felt like a ghost. Not one that haunted others, but one who was slowly disappearing from the world without anyone noticing. My days were quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your chest. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like rest, but more like a reminder that everyone else had moved on without you. I lived in a small wooden house near the edge of a forgotten village. It had once been alive, filled with the sound of a man's laughter, a child's footsteps on the floorboards, the smell of warm soup and fresh linen. But over time, one by one, each sound left. First, my husband, Daniel, passed away. A sudden stroke in the middle of the night. 1 minute, we were laughing about a silly TV show. The next morning, I was sitting in an ambulance staring at nothing. And then my children, they drifted away. Not out of malice. They had their own lives, in their own cities. I would get phone calls on birthdays and letters on holidays. But a phone can never replace a hug, and no letter ever wiped a tear off your cheek. So there I was, 68 years old. Waking up every day at dawn, making tea for one, watching the sun come up like it was a rerun of the same episode. I talked to the plants more than I talked to people. And yet, despite everything, I still had love in my bones. I could feel it, this aching warmth inside me with nowhere to go. Some people said I should travel or pick up a new hobby, but none of that filled the hollow space left inside me. I didn't need a distraction. I needed purpose. I remember the day it all began like it was yesterday. Funny how some days blur into nothing while others etch themselves into your soul. It was a Wednesday morning in early October. The air had that crispy, cold smell. The one that tells you autumn is truly here. I had run out of flour and planned to bake sweet rolls for the widow down the road. It was the only excuse I had to visit anyone. I bundled up in my brown shawl, the one Daniel always said made me look like a poet, and took the shortcut through the woods. There was a dirt road, one nobody used anymore, that led straight to the market. About halfway through there's an old crossroads. No signs. Just a worn-out fork where the gravel splits and joins again farther down. That place always gave me strange feelings. Not fear. Just wait. Like something had happened there long ago, and the land never forgot. And that morning as I approached it, I heard something unusual. It wasn't birds. It wasn't wind. It was crying. At first I thought I imagined it. The woods often echoed odd sounds. But then I heard it again. Sharp. Small. Fragile. A baby's cry. My feet stopped before my mind even caught up. My heart started pounding. I looked around, trying to find the source. Then I saw it. Right at the center of the crossroads, half tucked behind a bush, was a wicker basket. Old and fraying at the edges. Inside were 2 tiny bundles. I remember gasping so hard I nearly choked on the air. I rushed over, my hands trembling, knees shaking. There they were, 2 newborn babies. No more than a few days old. Wrapped in thin, mismatched cloth. Their cheeks were red from the cold, lips quivering. One was crying with a voice that didn't match his tiny body. The other was barely making a sound, just sucking her thumb and looking around with wide, glassy eyes. I dropped my grocery basket and fell to my knees beside them. "Dear Lord," I whispered. "Who would do this?" I checked their fingers, their feet, their little chests, making sure they were alive and breathing. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. No note.
No toys. No diapers.
Nothing. Just 2 abandoned souls in the middle of nowhere. Like someone left them to be forgotten. He took statements, photos, measurements. He called it in. More officers came. Then a social worker. They asked if I had moved them, touched them, wrapped them. I said yes, of course I had. They were freezing. And then they told me what I already feared. "They'll be taken to the city shelter," the woman said gently. "They'll be examined and placed in the system." "In the system?" I asked. "Yes. They'll be temporary wards of the state until a foster placement is found."
Is there here?
"But I found them." She blinked, surprised. "Yes, and thank you. But that doesn't give you custodial rights." "I'm not asking for rights," I said, voice rising. "I'm saying they were left here. For someone. For me." She gave me a polite smile. That's not how it works. But in my heart, I knew it was how it worked. Not legally, but spiritually. I didn't find them by accident. I found them because I was meant to. As the ambulance drove off with them, I stood there at the crossroads clutching my shawl, crying like I hadn't cried since Daniel died. Something in me had awakened. A part one thought was dead. And I wasn't about to let it fade again. That night I didn't sleep. I searched everything I could on the computer. Infant adoption laws, emergency guardianship, foster eligibility. I called the shelter the next day. And I told them, my name is Lena Ivanovich. I found those babies. And I'm not done with them yet. When you're an old woman past 60 walking with a limp in winter, alone in a house too quiet, people don't take you seriously. They smile at you like you're made of dust, like your time is done. But I wasn't done. The day I found those babies, something ancient and fierce woke up inside me. Something I hadn't felt since I held my first child. A storm of fire. It wasn't just maternal instinct, it was belonging. I didn't just find those babies. They found me, and I was going to fight for them. The morning after they were taken, I called the shelter nonstop until someone finally passed me to the director. Her name was Anika. She had the voice of a bureaucrat, calm, polite, but detached. They're doing okay, she said. They've been assigned temporary names, Baby A and Baby B. I hated that. Babies shouldn't be called letters. They deserved names, stories, lullabies. I want to see them, I said. She paused. Ma'am, are you a registered foster guardian?
No.
I'm the woman who found them. I held them when they were cold. I calmed them when they screamed. I sang to them. Silence. I understand you're emotionally involved, she said. But you're not family. Family isn't only blood, I snapped. Sometimes family is who shows up. That night I couldn't eat. My kitchen smelled of stew I never touched. The air felt hollow. So I made a plan. The next morning, I went into town and visited the district family office. They gave me a form 27 pages long. Paperwork for emergency foster application. I filled every line. Social security, home condition, medical history, financials. I had to prove I wasn't crazy. That I had money even though I didn't. That I had time, which I did. And that I was stable, which I wasn't sure of anymore. When I handed the paperwork in, the woman at the desk looked at me like I was a child pretending to adopt a puppy. You understand they may be placed elsewhere, she said. Let me at least try, I whispered. 2 weeks passed. I called every day. I baked cookies for the shelter staff. I visited the courthouse twice, just to sit in the family hearing gallery and try to understand how the system worked. Finally, I got a call. My application had been accepted for review. It was a glimmer of light in a tunnel. I'd walked blind. But the first home visit didn't go well. A young social worker named Marta showed up, clipboard in hand, pressed suit, nervous smile. She walked into my home like it was a museum exhibit. She glanced at my furniture, old but clean. My photos, faded but warm. She peeked in the bedrooms, the kitchen, the tiny nursery I had set up. Yes, I had a nursery. 2 cribs. Second-hand toys. A rocking chair from when my own babies were small. I dusted it off, repainted it myself. She took notes. She didn't say much. Is it just you here? She asked. Yes, I said. Just me. And you're 68? Correct. She wrote something down and looked at me over her glasses. Do you think you can physically handle 2 infants? I stared at her for a moment. I've lived alone for nearly a decade, I said. I cook for myself, garden, carry wood in the winter, and walk 2 miles to market every week. So yes, I think I can handle it. She nodded. But I could see it, that seed of doubt. Days turned to weeks. Every day without them felt like a month shaved off my life. I would sit by the phone, willing it to ring. I finally got a call from Marta again. She sounded uncertain. There's a complication, she said. What complication? They may be placed with another family. A young couple in the city. The world tilted. But I found them, I said, my voice breaking. They were mine before anyone even knew they existed. I know, she said softly. But the process weighs all factors. Age, income, long-term potential. What about love? I asked. Is that weighed? She didn't answer. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. I kneeled beside my bed, like I did when I was a child, and I prayed out loud. Dear Lord, I'm not asking for a miracle. Just a chance. Just let me prove that I'm still capable of loving. That I still matter. The next morning, I received another call. There's going to be a custody hearing, Marta said. The judge wants to meet you. My knees buckled, and I cried like I hadn't cried since Daniel died. The day of the hearing, I wore my best clothes, a blue dress with little embroidered flowers. Daniel's old wedding ring still on my hand. The courtroom was cold. Bleached walls. Steel chairs. A judge sat in the center, glasses perched low, his expression unreadable. Across from me sat the young couple, wealthy it seemed, smiling, hands intertwined. They wanted a child. They'd been trying for years. They thought it was fate. I didn't hate them, but I hated that they hadn't heard those babies cry. I stood and told my story. I told them about the crossroads, the cries, the shawl I wrapped them in, the lullaby I sang that first night. I don't have much, I said, voice shaking, but I have everything they need. I have love. I have time. I have a heart that's been waiting for something to beat for. The judge listened. The room was silent. The other couple gave their side. They could provide better health care, private education, modern living. They had money, a big house, a pool, and I had a rocking chair. I didn't expect to win, but I did. 3 weeks later I brought them home. Nina and Leo. My babies. My heart. I had never been more scared or more alive. They say I saved them. 2 abandoned babies left to fate on a cold morning. But the truth is they saved me. When I brought Nina and Leo home, I didn't feel like a savior. I felt terrified. I hadn't raised children in over 30 years. The world had changed. Diapers, bottles, even lullabies. Everything felt unfamiliar. But when I looked down at their faces, I didn't see confusion. I saw trust. I saw tiny fists clinging to the edge of my cardigan, eyes blinking slowly as they fell asleep in my arms. And in those moments, I found pieces of myself I thought I had buried with Daniel. They gave me purpose again. The first night was the longest. Nina cried for hours. Leo stayed quiet, but I could tell something wasn't right. The way his breathing sounded, sharp and wheezy. I held them both on my chest, whispering whatever came to my lips, folk songs, bedtime prayers, words I hadn't spoken in decades. I didn't sleep, not even a minute. But my heart, it was more awake than ever. The mornings became rituals. I'd wake up before the sun, already hearing tiny rustles from the nursery. Nina was always the first to stir. Restless, wide-eyed, already kicking her legs in the air like she was ready to conquer the world. Leo was different. He was slow to wake, eyes blinking like a baby owl, arms stretching softly as if asking, "Another day already?" Breakfast was a mess for weeks. I had forgotten how chaotic it was to feed babies, mush everywhere, more on the walls than in their mouths. But I laughed. I laughed so hard one morning tears ran down my cheeks. Not from frustration but from joy. I had missed this kind of chaos, the kind that fills a house with life. As the months passed, our bond deepened. Nina took her first steps in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter with jelly-smeared fingers, determined not to fall. When she finally let go, wobbling across the floor like a tiny drunk pirate, I cheered so loud I scared the chickens out back. Leo was slower to walk but quicker to understand. By 9 months, he would tilt his head when I spoke, his brow furrowing like he was deciphering my soul. He had this way of just knowing. One afternoon I sat in my rocking chair, staring at Daniel's old photograph. I didn't know I was crying until I felt a small hand on my cheek. Low. Barely able to stand, comforting me. That boy, he had an old soul. Raising them wasn't easy. Some days I felt my age in every joint, every step. My back ached, my hands trembled, and sometimes my energy ran out before the afternoon sun even peaked. There were doctor visits, sleepless nights, fevers, ear infections, tantrums that left me questioning everything. And yet, not once did I regret it, not even for a second, because every night when I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads and whispered, "You are safe, you are loved, you are mine," I felt whole. By the time they were 2, they had completely taken over the house. crayon drawings on the refrigerator, tiny shoes lined up by the door, sippy cups in every corner like sacred offerings. Nina loved music. She'd bang on pots, dance barefoot in the garden, and sing songs that made no sense, but always made me smile. Leo loved books. He would sit on the floor with a picture book and turn the pages slowly, sometimes upside down, completely mesmerized. One day he brought me an old photo album and pointed at a picture of Daniel. "Papa?" he asked. I froze. I picked him up, held him close, and whispered, "No, sweet boy. That was my husband. But he would have loved you so much." Leo just nodded like he understood. We became a team, the three of us. I learned their language before they learned mine. Nina had her own words. Nana for water. Bia for birds. Mimi for sleep. Leo was quieter but precise. He waited until he could say full words before he spoke, and when he did, it was as if he'd been listening for years. He would crawl into my lap, point at my wrinkled hands and say, "Safe," and I would melt. People in the village started noticing. At first, they called me crazy, the old widow raising two strange babies she found on the road. But over time they softened. The butcher gave us extra cuts for free. The florist left flowers on our porch. The librarian gave me children's books without even stamping them. And the children, oh, they became the heart of the village. Everyone knew their names. Everyone watched them grow. It was as if they were everyone's children, but mine most of all. By the time they turned 4, they began asking questions. "Why don't we have a mommy?" Nina asked one evening, her voice small as she stared at her reflection in the spoon. I felt the question like a knife. I set down my cup of tea and knelt beside her. "You do have a mommy," I said carefully. "But she wasn't ready to be your mommy when you were born. Was she sick?" Leo asked, already sensing there was more to the story. "In a way," I said. "She was lost. Scared. And sometimes when people are scared, they make choices that don't make sense." "Did she leave us?" Nina whispered. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She left you, so someone else could find you." Leo climbed into my lap and wrapped his arms around me. "Then we were lucky," he said. I kissed the top of his head. "No, sweet boy, I was the lucky one. We didn't have a big house.
No gadgets. No iPads. No fancy vacations.
But we had morning hugs, dance parties in the kitchen, quiet nights with cocoa and fairy tales. We had traditions. Every Friday we made cinnamon bread. Every Sunday we watched the stars. And slowly my house became a home again. A home filled with giggles, tears, tiny footprints in the dirt, and fingerprints on every glass surface. A home filled with love. And I became Lena again. Not the widow. Not the old lady at the edge of town. But Grandma Lena. Mama Lena. The woman who sang, baked, carried babies on her back and chased chickens barefoot through the garden while 2 toddlers cheered her on. They didn't just call me Grandma. They called me theirs. People always ask if I was ever scared. Scared to raise children so late in life, scared to start over, scared of the unknown. And the answer is yes. Of course I was scared. But I was more scared of doing nothing. Of spending the rest of my life watching sunsets alone. Wondering what could have been. Those babies saved me. And all I did was love them. It was a Tuesday. Funny how something so small can burn itself into your memory forever. The kind of day, the color of the sky, the way the wind moved the curtains. The kids were 5. Leo was playing with a wooden puzzle at the table, his lips pursed like an old man concentrating on a crossword. Nina had dragged a stool to the sink and was splashing water everywhere while pretending to wash dishes like Grandma. They were loud, happy. Mine. That's when I heard the knock. It wasn't like a neighbor's knock, not light or familiar. It was unsure, hesitant, almost apologetic. I dried my hands and opened the door. And there she was. Thin, pale, maybe 30, maybe younger, it was hard to tell. Her face was worn, eyes sunken, and her hands trembled as she clutched a manila envelope to her chest. First I thought she might be lost. Or worse, in trouble. But when her eyes landed on Leo through the window, she froze. And in that moment, I knew. She didn't have to say it. I felt it. In my bones. In the way her lips trembled, the way she couldn't speak, the way she kept looking from Leo to Nina and back to me. I stepped outside and gently closed the door behind me, keeping my body between her and the house like a shield. My name is Maya, she said finally. I said nothing. She swallowed hard, then handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. 2 pages, handwritten, messy ink, smudged in places that could have been tears or rain or both. It read, I am the mother of the twins you found at the crossroads. 5 years ago I left them there, because I believed they had a better chance if someone else found them. I was 20, homeless, addicted, alone. They were born in a shelter bathroom. I barely kept them alive for 3 days. I didn't want to give them away, but I couldn't keep them either. I've been in rehab. I've been clean for 4 years. I'm working now. I have a room, a small life, but it's mine, and I just needed to know if they were okay. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to see their faces even from a distance. That's all. I didn't know what to say. How do you speak to someone who gave you the greatest gift of your life by abandoning it? I looked at her. She wasn't crying, but she wasn't proud either. She stood like someone used to being judged, ready to be yelled at or dismissed. I've taken good care of them, I said softly. She nodded. I figured, she whispered. They look happy. They are. Silence. The wind rustled the apple tree in the front yard. I don't want to take them away, she said quickly. I promise. I wanted to tell you thank you. I've never said it, but I think about them every day. My heart warred with itself. Anger, compassion, protectiveness. I wanted to scream at her and hug her at the same time. I invited her in. Maybe I shouldn't have. But something in me, something deeper than reason, told me this was part of the story now, whether I liked it or not. The moment she stepped into the kitchen, Nina turned around. Who's that, Grandma? Leo looked up from his puzzle but didn't say anything. Just stared. I cleared my throat. This is Maya. She's an old friend of the family. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. Maya smiled, nervous, soft, like she didn't want to scare them. You have their eyes, she whispered. And she did. That almond shape. That deep hazel color. Leo tilted his head, still watching her. Nina, being Nina, ran over and held out her hand like a proper lady. I'm Nina. I'm 5. I like frogs and drawing and I can count to 100. Maya chuckled, a sound that was both joy and pain. I'm Maya, she said. I used to like frogs too. They played together for a while. Maya didn't touch them, just watched, smiling, talking softly when Nina asked her questions. Leo was more cautious. He hovered near me like a shadow. I could tell his little brain was spinning. After an hour I made an excuse. It's time for quiet play. And the kids went off to their room. Maya stayed in the kitchen. I didn't expect you to let me in, she said. I didn't expect you to come, I replied. She looked down at her hands. I don't want to confuse them, she said. You're their mother now. I see that. I feel that. I just wanted to see who they became. That night after she left, I sat in the dark for a long time, holding Leo's half-finished puzzle in my lap. I asked myself what I feared most. Losing them? Having to share them? Watching them get hurt? Or worse, watching them want someone else more than me? The next morning Leo asked me, is that lady gonna come back? I hesitated. Do you want her to? He shrugged. I don't know. She was nice. Nina added. She had sad eyes. Like the ones in your book. What book? I asked. The one with the fox who loses her babies, she said. I smiled. Leave it to children to see the whole picture in one glance. Maya didn't come back right away, but she wrote letters. Once a month, like clockwork. Short. Thoughtful. Never overstepping. She never asked for photos. Never asked to visit again. Just sent words. Things like, tell them I hope they're coloring a lot. I used to color trees with pink leaves. I hope they're being read to at night. I still remember the sound of my mother's voice when she read me stories. I lost her when I was 7. I'm saving up for my own tiny home. I painted the walls yellow. Sometimes I read the letters to the kids. Sometimes I didn't. But I always saved them. Then one day Leo asked, can I write her back? I froze. You want to write Maya? He nodded. She said pink trees are her favorite. I drew one. He held up a crayon drawing with a lopsided pink tree and two stick figure kids underneath it. My throat closed up. Nina piped in. Can I write too? I want to tell her I like frogs. And so we wrote back. Nothing big. Just drawings. Stickers. Notes in childish handwriting. And from that point forward Maya became a pen pal. Not a mother. Not a stranger. Something in between. As the months passed, she slowly stepped into a small corner of their world. One visit every few months. Always with boundaries. Always respectful. She never said, I'm your real mom. She said, I'm someone who loves you. And in time the children began to understand the truth. Not through secrets or whispers, but through honesty and love. People ask me why I allowed her back in. Why I opened that door. Why I risked my heart. And here's the truth. Because life is messy. Because forgiveness is a gift, not a transaction. Because one woman's worst mistake gave me the best part of my life. And if I can give back even a piece of that grace, then maybe we all heal a little. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was gradual like sunlight inching across a floor. Or maybe it came in one quick aching blink. But one day I looked at Leo and Nina, and they weren't children anymore. Leo stood taller than me by the time he was 12, lanky, thoughtful, always lost in some book or building something in the shed. Nina was fire and sunlight, bold, creative, the kind of girl who painted on the walls and asked questions no one knew how to answer. And I was older. Slower. My knees cracked when I climbed the stairs. My fingers ached in the mornings. I needed glasses to thread a needle, and naps became less optional. But my heart, it beat stronger than ever. We had built a life. Not a perfect one, but a good one. Maya still visited every few months. She kept her promise. Never overstepping, never trying to rewrite history. When the kids were old enough, I told them the whole story. How I found them, how Maya left them, and how we all chose love over resentment. It wasn't easy. There were tears, questions, long silences. Nina struggled with it more. She couldn't understand why a mother would leave her babies behind. And maybe she wasn't supposed to. But Leo? He listened quietly. Then he said, so, Maya gave us life. But you gave us living. I cried for hours that night. Not because I was sad, but because he understood. The years passed like chapters in a well-worn book. Nina discovered painting. Not just on paper, but on everything. Furniture, fences, rocks, walls. She saw the world in color and movement. When she was 16, she won a scholarship to an arts program in the city. I was proud and scared. She kissed me on the cheek before she left and said, Don't worry, Grandma. I'll always come back to where my story started. She did. Every holiday, every birthday, every time her heart needed to remember who she was. Leo. He became a firefighter. Yes, my quiet, puzzle-solving, observant boy. He said, I want to be there when someone cries for help, the way you were there for me. He never missed a Sunday dinner. Even when he had a shift the next day, he'd show up smelling like smoke and sweat, sit at the table and ask if I made his favorite pie. He always said it was the best pie in the world, even when I forgot the sugar. And then one day, I got sick. Not a cold. Not the flu. Something deeper. The kind that hides for years before showing its teeth. The doctors used words I didn't like. Chronic. Degenerative. Unpredictable. I sat on the porch that night with a blanket on my lap and watched the stars. Not with fear. Not even sadness. But with peace. Because if it was my time, if the sun was setting on my story, then I had no regrets. Not a single one. But Leo wasn't ready to hear that. Don't you dare start talking like you're leaving us, he said, voice shaking. I'm not, I whispered. I'm just preparing you. You raised me to fight, he said. Don't quit now. I smiled. I raised you to love. And part of love is knowing when to let go. He cried that night, the way he hadn't cried since he was a baby. And I held him like I did when he was too small for words, too full of feeling. I never did pass quickly. The doctors were wrong, I was too stubborn. I kept going. One day then another. Watched birthdays come and go. Watched Nina hang her paintings in galleries. Watched Leo hold hands with a girl he loved. Watched them become people. Good people. Kind. Brave. Generous. People who had every reason to be broken, and chose not to be. One afternoon Leo brought me a letter. It wasn't from the hospital or the bank. It was from him. He said, "Grandma, you've always said you found us that day. But we found you too. Before you I didn't know what safety felt like. Or love. Or what it meant to sit in silence and feel full instead of empty. Before you Nina didn't know how to laugh like she does now, belly deep, wild and unashamed. You didn't just raise us. You rebuilt us. And when you're gone, and I hate thinking about that day, I want you to know that everything you gave us will live on. In every story I tell, every fire I put out, every child Nina paints for. You were never just our grandma. You were, and always will be, our beginning." I held that letter in trembling hands and sobbed, not because I was sad, but because I had lived long enough to know that love really can heal anything. I keep that letter in my nightstand. Beside it is the shawl I wrapped them in the day I found them. It still smells faintly like lavender. Or maybe that's just memory. And sometimes when the wind howls and the sky turns gray, I sit on the porch and remember that cold October morning. The crossroads. The cries. The way my hands shook as I picked up 2 lives left for dead. And how in saving them, I saved myself. They weren't just my children. They were my second chance at life. And if you're listening to this, if you're older, alone, tired, or broken, let me say this. It's never too late. Love doesn't run out. And sometimes your greatest purpose finds you when you least expect it. Even at a quiet little crossroads.